Part 1, The Quietest Goodbye, from the series To the Man Who Never Chose Me, a bedtime story for healing hearts, read slowly like a whisper into the night. Tonight the sky holds its breath. Somewhere behind the curtain of stars, a memory stirs, soft as a sigh, weightless as the dust that dances in lamplight. I find myself reaching into the past, not to hold it, not to change it, but simply to let it sit beside me for a while. Like an old friend who no longer needs to speak. This story begins not with thunder nor tears, but with a quiet goodbye. So quiet, in fact, that I didn't know it had happened until months later, when I stood in front of the mirror one evening and realized he had already left me long before he walked away. You see, this is not a tale of betrayal. It is softer than that. This is the story of being almost loved. There were no slammed doors, no broken plates, just the fading of a gaze, the slow absence of questions, the silence after I said I'm scared, and he didn't ask, of what? Some people never choose you, not because you are unworthy, but because they are too unsure of themselves to hold something certain. I used to think love was loud, but now I know. The deepest heartbreaks arrive without sound. And yet, here I am, still whole, not untouched, but whole. So tonight, I'll lie back and let the memory of that quiet goodbye wash over me like gentle rain on an old rooftop. No bitterness, no longing, just the peace of knowing I once waited for someone who was never coming, and I finally learned how to stop waiting. Sleep now, soft heart. You are not unloved. You were simply never chosen by the wrong one. Ready for part 2? Would you like the image prompt and title for part 1 now? Part 2, Where the Coffee Went Cold. There was a morning, quiet like linen drying in winter light. I remember it not because of what was said, but because of what wasn't. The window was open just enough for the wind to hum through the kitchen screen, and the mug I had poured for him sat untouched on the table. I had stirred in sugar, the way he liked. A small thing, but still, love, when it is fading, becomes a list of small things that go unnoticed. He was late, or maybe I was early. Or maybe we were just no longer arriving at the same time in each other's lives. The chair across from me was empty, but his phone buzzed on the counter. The screen lit up with a name I didn't recognize, and for the first time I didn't ask. I didn't want the answer, or maybe I already had it. And so I drank my coffee alone, even though he came in a few minutes later, kissed my hair, said something about traffic. His voice was ordinary, but nothing else was. That's how it happens. The unraveling. It doesn't scream. It doesn't crack. It just slips, like warm coffee cooling slowly into something bitter. Still, I sat with that cup until the last sip. I wanted to feel the goodbye as it passed through my mouth, as it slid down my throat, as it settled in my chest and made a quiet home inside me. That was the morning I stopped asking if he'd like toast. That was the morning I started learning how to sit in silence without reaching across the table. And now let the night fold around you like an old sweater you forgot you loved. You are safe here and warm still. Part 3, The Blue Shirt He Forgot. It hung behind the door for weeks. Crisp cotton, faint scent of cedar and cologne, a single button missing at the cuff. The kind of detail only someone who once cared would notice. I remember folding it once, then unfolding it again. Like memory itself, neatly put away, then suddenly needed. He used to wear it on Sundays when we would drive nowhere in particular, windows down, music low, and I would watch the light play across his jaw as if the sun had chosen him. Now the shirt hung there, untouched, not quite part of the laundry, not quite part of him anymore. Just a ghost, soft with wear. I moved it once, gently, as though it might flinch, but it only swayed on its hanger, silent, like the space he'd left in the bed. It's strange, the things we keep. Not because we need them, but because we don't know who we'll be without the things that once made us feel chosen. One morning, I almost wore it. Not out of longing, but out of rebellion, as if putting it on might let me wear the version of myself he used to look at with soft eyes, but I didn't. Instead, I opened the window, let in the morning, and watched the wind stir the hem like a tide coming in. Some days, love leaves quietly. Other days, it hangs behind the door, blue, familiar, and no longer warm. Rest now. Let the stillness hold you, like hands with no demands. You are not forgotten. You are becoming. Part 4, The Way the Light Fell on the Floor. There's a hush that lives between 3 and 4 a.m. A hush that doesn't ask anything of you. It just sits there, like an old friend on the edge of your bed, watching you breathe. That's when I saw it, the light. Thin as thread slipping through the crack in the curtains, spilling across the wooden floor in slow gold silence. It fell exactly where he used to leave his shoes. One facing forward, one turned a little sideways, like he always rushed to get to me, like he was always halfway toward staying. Funny how I still step around that space, like his shoes might still be there, like memory has weight. The floorboards creaked when I moved, not because I was heavy, but because the house remembered him too. Old places carry old echoes, and yet in that hour of no one watching, the light didn't feel lonely. It just was, soft, still, unafraid of being seen. I sat on the edge of the bed and let it brush my toes. It felt like forgiveness, not from him, but from myself. Because I kept thinking, maybe healing isn't loud, isn't bold or blazing. Maybe it's this, a quiet light touching an empty floor, reminding me that even in the absence, something beautiful can arrive without asking. Close your eyes now. Let the hush carry you. There's light even in the places no one stands anymore. Tiptuk. Part 5. The scent of warm bread and old letters. Some mornings the soul wakes up before the body does, and when it does, it asks for something soft, a smell, a sound, a memory that doesn't hurt to touch. That morning I found myself in the kitchen, barefoot, still in the long cotton nightdress with the loose thread by the sleeve. The kettle hadn't boiled yet, but I already knew what I wanted, the smell of warm bread. So I opened the freezer, found the last frozen roll I'd made weeks ago. He used to love it with honey. I used to make two, even when I was alone. One for me, one for the ghost of what could have been. As it baked, the smell filled the small space, yeast and butter and something older than both, maybe patience, maybe hope. I sat down at the table, the steam from my mug curling like an old photograph, and as if drawn by something unseen, I reached for the drawer by the window, the one I hadn't opened in years. Inside, under paper clips and faded receipts, was a bundle of letters tied with twine. Not from him. From me. To no one. To everyone. To the version of myself that used to believe love would always be returned if it was real. I read one. The ink had blurred from a tear I no longer remembered crying. The words were simple. I waited for him to choose me, but I forgot I could choose myself. The oven dinged. The bread was done. The letter folded quietly back into its place, and I smiled, not out of joy, but out of peace. I buttered the roll, let it melt slow, took a bite. It tasted like becoming whole. Rest now. Even grief softens when wrapped in warmth. Even silence smells like bread sometimes. Part 6. When the light turns soft at 4 p.m. There's a kind of hour that doesn't speak loudly. It arrives gently, somewhere between afternoon and evening, when the light grows warm but tired, when even the shadows seem to whisper instead of stretch. It was 4 p.m. when I looked up and realized I hadn't said a word all day. Not out of sadness, but because silence had become my favorite companion. I stood by the window, watching the way the gold dust hung in the air like particles of old dreams. Outside, someone was trimming roses, and somewhere in the distance, a child laughed. The sound lifted like wind chimes across time. I made tea without hurrying. Chamomile, a little too much honey. The cup warmed my fingers, and for a long time I simply stood there, holding that small warmth like it was all I needed. There used to be a man who'd fill these hours. He'd come home around this time, smelling of wind and work and something unreachable. We'd talk about little things, the weather, the groceries, a neighbor's barking dog, but never about what mattered. Never about why I always felt like I was holding my breath. I don't miss him in the loud ways anymore, just in the pauses. In the way I still set 2 mugs on the shelf, still reach for the remote before remembering there's no one to argue about movies with. And yet, that hour, that soft 4 p.m. hour, holds no bitterness, only stillness, only the knowing that even unloved things can glow when the light is right. Let the quiet hours wrap around you like a warm shawl. There is healing, even in what never was. Part 7. The dress I never wore. In the back of the closet, beneath years of other seasons, hung a pale blue dress, still smelling faintly of lavender and hopes never spoken aloud. I hadn't looked at it in years, not because I forgot, but because some fabrics feel like memory pressed into thread, too delicate to unfold, too loud in their silence. It was meant for a dinner that never happened. A night I thought would change something. Maybe not the world, but at least the way he looked at me. I had imagined us by candlelight, the soft music, the way his eyes might pause just a second longer, realizing finally that I had always been there. But the evening came and went. He texted that he was staying late, and I, foolishly dressed in blue and borrowed hope, waited with a glass of wine and 2 empty plates, watching the flicker of candles melt into nothing. I never returned the dress, never gave it away, because somewhere in its seams lived a version of me, the one who still believed that love, if patient enough, would eventually be chosen. Today I took it out, ran my fingers along the stitching. It no longer fit quite right. Time had reshaped me, not just my body, but the way I carry my waiting. And for the first time, I didn't feel sadness, only tenderness. For that girl in the mirror, twirling in hope she'd never confess aloud. I folded the dress neatly, placed it back. Some things are not meant to be worn, only remembered. If tonight your heart wears old dreams like a second skin, let them rest gently beside you. The night is long enough for healing. Part 8. The Window That Faced the Sea. There was a little window in the house where I once spent one slow summer, a house borrowed from a friend, where silence was abundant and the air always smelled like salt and thyme. That window faced the sea. And every morning, before the world remembered to be loud, I'd sit beside it with a cup of warm coffee between my palms, watching the waves do what hearts often can't. Come close, retreat, return again. The sea never promised to stay. It just kept returning. Sometimes I'd pretend he was beside me, the man who never chose me, whose name I whispered into the steam rising from my cup, as though it could carry longing across coastlines and time zones. I wrote him letters I never sent, half-filled journals with what-ifs and small kindnesses he never knew he gave me. The way he once remembered my birthday, the gentle way he held a door, the soft furrow in his brow when he was deep in thought. And though he never belonged to me, in that house by the sea, I let myself belong to the morning. There was no need for resolution, only tide, only breath, only that soft pull toward peace that comes when you stop asking the waves for answers. The window is probably still there, still facing the sea, still catching morning light, like a secret shared between sky and salt water. And maybe, just maybe, someone else is sitting there now, learning how to love without needing to be loved back. Tonight, let your breath be the tide, gentle, returning, never needing permission to rest. Part 9. The Sweater I Never Returned. There's a gray sweater folded in the back of my closet. Soft, a little worn at the elbows, sleeves too long for me. His sweater. I never meant to keep it. It ended up in my bag one chilly evening when I left his apartment, wrapped around me like a temporary belonging. At the time, I thought I'd return it next week or the week after, when things made more sense. But weeks turned into years, and now it sits there, not quite forgotten, not quite remembered, just a quiet artifact of a love that was mostly silence. Sometimes, when autumn presses its breath against the windows and the wind sighs like it knows what I've lost, I'll take it out, hold it to my face, and breathe in a scent long gone. Not his cologne anymore, but the vague memory of being held. It doesn't hurt exactly. It's more like a familiar ache, like the way certain songs make you smile with a lump in your throat, or how the smell of cinnamon reminds you of a kitchen that no longer exists. I never wore the sweater in public. It felt too much like a confession, too intimate, too unfinished. But I never threw it away either, because some things we don't keep out of hope, we keep them to remember that we once hoped at all. And tonight, I'll fold it again, tuck it back in the dark corner where memory sleeps, not because I'm still waiting, but because I've learned that some love doesn't need to end loudly. It just becomes a quiet shape in the dark. Rest now. Let the night hold you gently, like an old sweater worn soft by time. Part 10. The moon didn't ask me why. There's a kind of honesty that only comes under moonlight, when the world is hushed and even the walls stop listening. I used to sit by the window, wrapped in a blanket that smelled of lavender and quiet, and watch the moon rise behind the trees, patient and pale, like a friend who never interrupts. It never asked me why I stayed, why I waited, why I whispered his name into my tea like it might steep into something whole. The moon didn't judge the longing, or the way I clutched empty promises like pearls strung too tightly around my throat. It just shone, soft and forgiving, casting silver over my questions. I told it everything. That he never chose me, not really. That I tried to become smaller, quieter, gentler with my needs, as if being easier to love would make him love me more. But the moon never answered. It only bathed my sorrow in light until it looked like something sacred. I think that's what I needed all along. Not solutions, not reasons, just a place to put my ache where it could glow quietly without being shamed. So many nights I poured myself out on the sill like water too full to stay contained, and the moon kept showing up, not to save me, but to remind me that even the darkest skies can hold something gentle. And maybe that's enough. Tonight, the moon is full again. I see myself in its softness, not broken, not waiting, just beautifully, silently whole. Now close your eyes. Let the quiet moon cradle your heart into stillness. Part 11. The drawer where I kept the letters. There is a drawer, tucked beneath old scarves and forgotten gloves, where I used to keep every letter I never sent you. Some were short, just your name and the ache that followed. Others spanned pages, rivers of ink spelling out all the things I was too afraid to say out loud. The drawer smelled of cedar and dust, and every time I opened it, the air felt like the hush of a church. Sacred, but slightly sad. I never knew what I was waiting for. Maybe a day I'd be brave enough to send them. Maybe a time you'd knock on my door, and I'd place them in your hands like an offering. But the knocking never came, and the words never left. Instead, they aged in silence, wrinkling at the edges like old skin, turning the color of time. Sometimes I reread them, not to remember you, but to remember who I was when I still thought you might choose me. The letters held versions of me that no longer exist, the girl who believed loving someone enough could eventually be enough. But tonight, as the stars rest gently outside my window, I open the drawer one last time, not to add another letter, not to cry, just to thank that younger version of me for writing, for hoping, for surviving. And then softly I close the drawer. The quiet click sounds like forgiveness. Rest now, gentle soul. You are not the words left unsent. You are the silence that finally feels like peace. Part 12. The street where we never walked together. There's a quiet little street just beyond the bookstore, where the houses lean close like old friends, and the leaves gather in soft whispers along the curb. I used to imagine walking down that street with you, hands tucked into pockets, hearts quietly aligned. We never did. But I walked it anyway, often, alone, with a coffee in hand and your name in my throat like a secret. I'd pass the green gate with the chipped paint and wonder if we might have stopped there, laughing about nothing, arguing about where to eat. 1,000 tiny alternate lives pressed between the cracks of cobblestone. Sometimes I'd glance up at the windows, wondering which version of me you would have liked best. The quiet one? The brave one? The one who would have stood still if only you had asked? Time didn't erase you. It softened you, like light through lace curtains. And that street, the one you never walked with me, became mine. I named each tree after a moment I survived. I let the wind tell me things I was too tired to ask, and little by little, the street stopped hurting. Not because I forgot you, but because I remembered me. The me who walked anyway. The me who didn't wait forever. The me who could love and still keep moving. So rest easy, heart of mine. You've walked far enough for one night. Let the street grow still. Let the stars take over. Part 13. The dress I never wore. It still hangs at the back of my closet, tucked between seasons and shadows. A soft blue dress, chosen for a day that never arrived. There was a time I imagined wearing it for you. Not for a wedding, not for a grand gesture. Just an ordinary afternoon when the light was kind and I wanted to feel beautiful because you were looking at me. I remember the day I bought it, how the silk whispered against my skin, how I stood in the changing room not seeing myself, but seeing your eyes as if they might finally see me. But you didn't. And the dress stayed there, untouched, never wrinkled, never worn. Not because I held on to the hope, but because part of me still wished I could have been the version of me that felt enough in your gaze. Sometimes I open the closet just to feel its weight, a memory that never became real, soft as a sigh, fragile as a first dream. I haven't thrown it out, not because I'm waiting, but because even the things we never use have stories, and even the love that didn't bloom deserves a small, quiet corner to rest in. I imagine one day wearing it for the sun, for a garden that needs no audience, for myself. And on that day, I won't be thinking of you. I'll be thinking of the girl who believed she could be loved in blue. Close your eyes, gentle soul. Let the fabric fall around your dreams tonight. You're already beautiful enough. Part 14. The letter I never sent. It lives in a drawer, folded neatly, on cream-colored paper that smells faintly of lavender and old dust. The ink has faded, but the feeling has not. I wrote it one evening when the world felt too quiet and my heart too loud. No dramatic confessions, no grand accusations, just a letter, just truth. I told you how I waited, in doorways, in seasons, in pauses between your sentences. How I used to mistake your silence for mystery, your absence for gravity. I told you how I tucked myself into corners so you wouldn't feel crowded. How I made myself smaller, hoping you'd make room for me. I wrote about the little things. The way your coffee cup stayed full when you talked to her. The way you laughed like I wasn't in the room. I didn't write in anger. I wrote in quiet grief, the kind that comes when the sky is clear, but you're still cold. At the end, I didn't ask for answers. I simply wrote, if one day you wonder why I stopped knocking, it's because I finally realized the door was never mine to open. I sealed it, never mailed it. Sometimes healing means choosing silence. Not because you have nothing to say, but because you finally said it all to yourself. And now the letter sleeps, like a leaf pressed between pages, like a part of me that once reached, but has since learned to rest. Now, rest too. There are no more words left tonight. Only breath, only stillness. The quietest goodbye. There wasn't a scene. No packed suitcases, no storm of shouted words. Just a morning that arrived gently, gray light through the curtains, the slow hum of a waking world that no longer had a place for us. I made tea, poured it into the mug you used to drink from. Not out of longing, but habit, like the way one still reaches for a lamp in a room where the bulb has long gone out. I sat at the table where we used to plan weekends and birthdays and dinners we never cooked. It all felt like a house remembering laughter that no longer lived here. There were no tears. Grief had come and gone in quiet tides, had visited in the rustle of a shirt I never threw out, in a song that knew our names. Now all that was left was stillness, the kind that doesn't ache anymore. I didn't need closure. I didn't want it. Some goodbyes are meant to be soft, meant to dissolve slowly, like snow melting under a morning sun that does not apologize for rising. So I whispered goodbye to the echo of a man who never chose me, to the chapters I once tried to underline in bold. And then I folded the moment like a letter, placed it in the quietest part of my heart, and walked forward, barefoot, unafraid. Because peace, I've learned, doesn't come with answers. It comes when you no longer need them. Sleep now, dear heart. You've made it all the way through. The story has ended, and in its stillness, you are free.